going to ask our local hay farmer, 25 an acre, just to hay the areas that won't be in production this year. So certain areas are a little bit small for us to think about getting vegetables onto right now or maybe ever, like this field here. Very difficult to think about working because the sun's coming from here. This is a steep hill. So you can see that right there. See that shadow? That shadow gets really long in the spring and the fall. So those kind of areas are going to be less appropriate for vegetables. They need sun. They need full sun.
Well, good for cool weather hay. Haven't
Yes.
for those folks that needed last year, grasslands was the special topic last year, right?
Yeah.
They went into hot weather grass and cold weather grass.
Yeah, cool season grasses, or you see some really lush grass coming up there right this time of year. And that'll stay lush much longer than this area. This area will start to look burnt, and if it wasn't hay, it would be warmer season grasses and probably less productive in the summer. But that's a good, assuming the drainage there is good, assuming the soils there are good, that's a great spot to throw a vegetable plot. That's about 8 acres there. This field, kind of tricky. What this line is a river. So you've got to work with that too. You've got to stay away from the banks of the river. You can't be, plowing up right to the water's edge. That's not a good idea.
Can you take water out of the stream for irrigation? Probably not in the summer when the stream is.
Yeah, I've done that. We were on the Palmer River in Rehoboth, and with streams, you run into some issues. You've got silt running down those, and the pump is working hard, sucking up all that silt. In our case, upstream there was a dam. It was a 200-year-old dam, and it just so happened that after 200 years, it decided to break when we were pumping out of it. The dam just washed down over our submerged pump and destroyed it. So we were out $1,000 or whatever, and no water. So that's tricky. More stable environments for pumps are things like ponds. This is an old ice pond. This is a good spot to pull water out of, assuming local regulations allow you to do it, assuming wetlands, you're not violating any wetlands regulations or water regulations.
So they would have cut ice out of that for the ice box.
Yes.
Old-fashioned ice box.
Yeah, my farm, Matheson Farm, and this farm both feature beautiful ice houses. That was a big business for a few years. I don't know, the end of the 19th century, I think, is when it was really going strong. You could keep your milk cool and your vegetables. They used them for both, and at Matheson they actually had a general store because they would sell the ice. And yeah, in both cases, it was a shallow pond that you would have a sluice gate on, and it's still there, so you can block the flow of water, and the level of ice rises or level of water rises, then it freezes, then they go in and cut, then they fill it up again, then they go in and cut. And they store it all in this big shed that's insulated with sawdust. Now it's the museum at the farm. It's like Paul said, it's this old museum that they built 30-something years ago, and in the ice house, just for the heck of it, I guess. On this map, it's hard to see. It's connected to the barn. That's typical because the ice was used to keep the milk cold before refrigeration. It's my understanding, I don't know if this is true, USDA kind of initiated a lot of these things. One of its first incarnations was to get farmers to build these big sanitary dairy barns. Before that, you just milk the cow wherever you happen to, it was kind of a dirtier process. So the government wanted farmers to get more clean and wanted them to produce more milk. Oh. Sorry, I'm going too far into the history. So, yeah, I could talk about a number of things here. On my farm, we didn't have the opportunities that you have here. You've got, in terms of Rhode Island farmland, you've got unlimited space. You've got flat land. You've got relatively stone-free soil. You can bring big equipment in here, and you can reach a level of efficiency that's pretty high. And in terms of going with sustainable agriculture, efficiency can be you can bring in the right equipment and do it right and still be sustainable. Some people might want to think that larger equipment means that it's a less environmentally responsible way of farming, but that's not necessarily true. I think, the prices that you get for organically produced vegetables or chemical-free vegetables are a premium. And I encourage growers to pursue that, but at the same time, our organization doesn't take a stand on it. If you have a business model that relies on chemical agriculture, as an organization, we really can't offer an opinion on that. That's up to you, how you decide to pursue this. But I can say that there's a market for organically produced vegetables. And on this land, you can come in and do things that smaller growers in smaller patches might not be able to do. You can grow a whole field of organic sweet corn, and that's a pretty rare commodity in this state. You could grow, one guy we've been talking to wants to grow a field of beans. That's something you could do here. The trick with conservation farming, though, is if you want to grow a big field of something, we don't want you to just go fence row to fence row, pile the place up, and plant your thing, maybe spray it a few times, and just go home and watch TV. We'd rather you're doing some conservation measures around that. You're doing some pollinator habitat, cover cropping, strip cropping, conservation tillage, where instead of turning all the soil over all the time and pulverizing it, you're going deep with a subsoiler, and you're creating tilth from underneath, essentially. Those are things that we would encourage here. Yeah, I'm not sure where to go right now, so.
Questions for Matt, just kind of base your plan out, like the two white, I don't know what those two white sheds are.
Those are mysterious. I don't know I thought those might be hay bales. The guy it's silage hay, so you come in and you make a giant bale and then you wrap it in white plastic. But I'm not sure, they look too geometric for that.
They're not there anymore.
They're not there anymore.
Right. I mean, if you go by Meadowburg Farm and places like that, it's a large tube like that.
Oh, maybe that's what he did, yeah. Over here, you've got your irrigation well by the house. I don't know if you have this information, but that will do 50 to 100 gallons a minute of water for you. And that's not potable water, that's a shallow well. You're going to want to test it anyway, just to make sure you're not irrigating with E. coli.
We have everything that is available on our website.
Okay, so.
On the request for proposal, it would have had all these amenities out there.
Okay. Yeah, so you saw what we're proposing, that we charge for space in the barn. The barns themselves, Paul mentioned to me a while ago, this is a very unique multi-million-dollar property. You've got a huge barn, but at the same time, that barn is a architectural treasure. So you have to be very careful about what you propose to do with it. Heavy equipment in there, although you do have the ability to pull that equipment into the bottom of the barn, might be a hazard because you have fuel, you have oil, you have potential for fire. And that's like a really kind of a concern right now. We don't have a lot of fire protection out there. We don't have a way to control that if it were to start. So we're talking about maybe a fuel shed or a repair shop, some separate building that would keep the danger of fire away from this building. Because if we lose it, we're in big trouble.
Part of the trick is how do you utilize the existing structures, but add ones that might service modern aspects of the farm.
Yeah, that's what we learned coming up in this business. You encounter a lot of old buildings that were built for very different reasons or purposes than they're being used for now. This was built for cattle. This is a building that was built to house cattle. So it's set up for that, to store a bunch of hay and to milk cows. It's not exactly what you would build if you were just starting from scratch in this.
It wasn't a meat, it was a dairy farm.
It was a dairy farm at some point. Dairy was not, I was starting to get into that with the government stuff, but dairy was very active for, 50 years in this country, and places like this were very typical, but most of them have gone under because milk is so cheap. Nobody can make money on dairy. So we've just not even talked about animals at all. I don't know if that's something they need to know, right? We're not.
No, they don't need to know that at all.
Okay.
That's our premise, not theirs.
Okay, so they can talk about animals. Okay, so you could use this.
We don't have to be accurate to what the cost proposal is.
Not even close. Please, you can look that over and use it maybe as our thoughts, not your thoughts. You
Yeah.
are free from the restrictions. Exactly. We have biases already built in. We don't want our biases to influence what you're doing.
You could raise llamas, you could raise.
You can do whatever you please out there. And
But they have to
people know
conform to the DEM lease, right?
They don't have to worry about that.
Okay, all right.
Lease has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Come in with great ideas.
Yeah.
And don't forget that these farmers need to have these additional income flows. And one of the great supports in Rhode Island is that you're not taxed as a business owner if you're doing business on your farm. If you have corn mazes, if you have a farm stand, if you, have a museum there.
If you look at the latest Google image of this field, you can still see the remains of the cornfield. If you zoom in on that field, you can see the corn maze. Because people will come in and give you a couple bucks to go through your corn maze. That's cash in hand, and you didn't even have to put out any crop.
Yeah.
Raise pumpkins.
Yeah, agritourism is definitely something you should think about, and there's more and more ideas on that. I mean, everything from a farm, winery to, maybe somebody wants to come and,
Haunted farm tours in October.
yep, put a glass wall on your cheese making facility, and people will pay to come and watch you make cheese. And, so you're getting paid twice. You're getting paid for the cheese and to make it, and to have people watch you make it.
In the middle of the field, right in the center there, a little bit to the right of the orange line, what's that?
Cemetery,
Yeah.
cemetery, cemetery.
Can't change those.
We have 2 cemeteries out there.
Three.
If you notice something, when you do see the site, is the tillage around the cemetery.
Yeah.
And that would give you.
Those are state registered cemeteries.
Very much so.
And,
Anyone can walk out and look at those at any time they want.
and the,
Exactly, and the local historical society has been maintaining it. When we had our open house, besides us just chatting with them, we got a phenomenal amount of information from the neighbors because, like I said, they felt that this was their yard.
living history, you've got Watermans, Steers, Dames, probably 3 other famous Rhode Island names buried in those cemeteries. And all those descendants are still around, and they still come and talk about people that have been dead for,
You could say people were just dying to go look at
We do need to transition to Pia, so she has time, but
Sorry, Pia.
when you were living there, part of the farming, as Paul's RFP said, is to develop a communal sense. Are the people pretty much for this farm in the neighborhood?
Sort of politically, you mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I felt lucky because I have some roots in the Johnston community, and I wasn't walking into it blind. I know some of the players, and there's people on all sides. There's some push from bigger farmers. Some of them think just one person should take over the whole thing. The neighbors don't want to see certain things happening there. They have assumptions about what might happen there. They think possibly some sort of, community farm is going to spring up with these tiny little plots, and the whole thing is just going to be this patchwork. And we had never planned on something like that. We had been looking for, active farmers that were just trying to expand their businesses, basically.